my fault.
Tragedy.
It is.
Tragedy.
It is very tragic. He's like carries the show. So this is good.
I'm good at yapping.
Whoops.
I can talk.
I've been
Trust,
in.
I can fill time.
I've really been enjoying your. I don't get to catch it very often, but when I do, your D&D game, Paperback, right? Paperback Pantheon. Paperwork
Yeah, yeah.
Pantheon. I was so close.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy of like the gods.
That idea was so funny to me when I started doing it. I was like, because that's been like my dream campaign for so long, because I've been slowly building out this world and this idea. So it's like been finally being able to like actually DM it with like a party of people who I'm like, okay, you're all gonna need to get really chill with a lot of shit real fast.
Well, they're such a good group too, from what I've seen at the very least.
They're excellent. They're all good at like a thing that I needed for the campaign to be successful.
Right.
Brooke and Danny are the mechanical munchers who I just hand stat sheets to, and I give them numbers and dice and tell them to go, all right, have at it, go buck wild. And usually they'll just go crazy with it, whatever I give them. Amelia makes all of the wrong decisions at the best times. And I know if I need someone to do something that is so questionably useful, but I need them to do it, I always just slide that to Amelia's way. I always do.
That's perfect.
And when Patrick's not insanely busy, and when he does show up, he's such a good actor, such a good scene partner.
You've always got to have one. There's always got to be one. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Tavern. Landon is not currently with us because I think I fucked up the time on him, and that's my bad. I'm sorry, Landon. You have to miss this one. That's my bad. I'll catch you after. Welcome, Offbeat Outlaw. I'm so excited to have you here to talk to us about how literacy is dead. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, my name is Offbeat Outlaw. I am a YouTuber by by current trade. I have Offbeat Outlaw YouTube channel. I'm currently at 260,000 subscribers. I've made mostly Dungeons and Dragons shorts and comedy sketches. But I'm slowly moving more into media analysis and commentary videos, as I feel that is more exciting to my brain at this current moment. I'm still doing D&D stuff, because like I've done so much D&D stuff. I can't just give up.
Too deep in the hole.
That's like too deep. That's like 5 years. That's like 5 years of my life at this point. Gotta keep doing it.
This little baby over here. Congratulations.
But I did get a theater and drama studies degree from the University of Toronto, with an acting diploma from Sheridan, and nearly got a minor in chem, calc, and cinema. Nearly. I didn't finish those because ran out of time.
Oh no! I mean, you can always go back.
I'm going to law school. I gotta try to get. I gotta make. It's all expensive up here in Toronto.
It's true.
So much money.
I am not far from Toronto, so no, I hear you. Toronto's an expensive place to be. So recently you've been shifting your content over, and you've been talking. One of your videos was about media literacy. One of your videos was about satire and its kind of way about Helldivers, as well as recently your video that just came out yesterday or the day before.
Last week on Avatar.
Oh, last week for Avatar, and it's about like the fan base, and you talked about how nobody knows who the real villain of that series is, and I'm like, yeah, you convinced me.
I was blown. My mind was blown with Avatar, because the thing is like it's clearly an old show in the fact that like Avatar: The Last Airbender came out like 2004, so I was baby. I was in first grade at that point, and then Avatar: Legend of Korra finished in 2016. And I was just starting university, so I was like 17, and that just really wasn't my. I just didn't grow up watching the other one, so I didn't watch that one. So now I finally watched it this year with my partner, and I have had everything spoiled to me. Everything was spoiled to me. I knew that Kora got poisoned. I knew Kora was gay. I knew Kora fought some dude named Unnamed, and there was a dark avatar. I knew that she lost the past lives. If you haven't seen Avatar, this is going to be a spoiler speedrun.
It's just spoiler for Kora. It's okay. It's not as important.
Yeah. You and most of the fandom would say that.
Right?
all of the I knew basically everything about the series. I knew Zahir lost his earthly tether or something. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it happened. But then, do you want to know who legit nothing? Radio silence on is Varric. This
Unbelievable.
Whole rant, oh. If you want to see me rant about it, you have to watch YouTube. I've ranted about this with my friends. After I watched it, I went to all of my friends. I just drilled them. I'm like, you know Varric exists? And they're like, yeah, he's a funny guy. I'm like, no, he's not.
He's literally the devil.
He is the guy who killed Franz Ferdinand and then also made the nuclear bomb. Like
he is both Oppenheimer and the man on the grassy knoll.
Yeah, exactly. It's him.
I was convinced. I listened to your rant and I was just like, yo, he's not wrong. This is all correct. This is too correct. So like there's this whole bit of, and I think that kind of ties into your media literacy. I think this is just something that most people or everybody just kind of like right over their head that this was going on. And I think had people caught on to that more, Kora would have been a more liked series.
I think so. I think the thing is with Kora is it came out at a weird time. I think it came out early 2010s. And people were very anti. Everyone was too busy hating on Kora to realize the story was good. And
fair.
The Kora hate was whack. That like
it was a little unreasonable.
It was like there are tons of valid criticisms for that series too. Like they never learned to write romance. They never did. They sucked.
They just
at it
didn't do it in
Outlaw.
Yeah, they just didn't do it in much. It lended itself to being kind of bad because of how young they were. So it kind of worked.
Yeah,
it doesn't work for teenagers.
No, it doesn't. The thing is with Avatar is like chemistry is something that's like it's like you can tell when characters are have chemistry in terms of like they're bouncing off each other, their stories are lining up with each other, and that makes for good television. I am a firm believer that good couples are terrible television. It's like if you have a good couple, that's a bad movie. Like it's a bad show. You need toxicity for good TV. Like
you can have a stable couple, but they cannot be the main romance of whatever the show is going on. That's not who we're following. It has to be something weird going on. That's why the adults were so much more interesting.
Yeah. And then
Tenzin and Lin.
Oh, Tenzin and Lin was hilarious. Oh my god. It's like, but like that is what makes the shows good is that tension. And that's why like I understand the Zutara shippers because I'm like, yeah, that scene was awesome. That was electric. It was so good. And regardless of whether or not they would have been good for each other, it was a good scene and would have made an interesting TV romance. Aang and Katara is boring. I don't care that they grew up with each other. I don't care. It's weird. They're lame. It's like
they're boring. They're not like that fiery passion, like, will they, won't they? Oh my god, what would happen if they did? Like, they don't have that because they're too stable. They're too reasonable.
Yeah, they're like, and even when Aang is unreasonable, it's like, he apologizes? Fuck is that? Get out of here.
Why are you so wholesome? Cut it out.
Why? Cut that out. We need more toxicity. But the thing is like you need like that element of toxicity for good TV in romance. Like and when I say you need it, it's obviously an exception to every rule. It's just a good way to make good TV. And they never did that. And they never learned how to write good romance because in Kora, it also sucks. They tried to make it weird and toxic, but then it was just annoying. They just made Mako an idiot.
Yeah.
How do you fumble two gorgeous women because you can't decide, and then they end up dating at the end? And to those who say they don't date at the end, to those who say they don't, when I get you,
He's in your closet.
I'm there. But
don't look behind you.
That show.
It did have a lot of. It suffered from production problems for sure and scheduling issues, and that's always going to come out in that kind of thing where it's like, oh, we want a will they won't they? We don't want a will they won't they get 2 to 3 seasons of the show.
Yeah, we don't want them going back and forth and back and forth. It's annoying. So they thankfully did the right thing and just went, Mako's just like a cop now. He's doing his procedural cop drama.
Doing paperwork.
Yeah, he's Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Everyone else is Avatar.
Poor Mako. We would have liked to
Mm,
see him do better. I
mm,
so one of the things that you brought up, I want to kind of bring back to Helldivers because like that's a
mm,
whole chunk of storytelling and satire and some of the way that you've
mm,
approached sort of the arguments that you're seeing on Twitter. How do you first off, how do you pick your arguments? Because I know that
mm.
you've got basically three different ones that you cover on and one per each video basically.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more
So,
nuanced than that, but
mm.
how do
how
you
I
choose? Yeah.
how I pick my arguments is typically whenever I'm watching or consuming media, I
Hmm.
am constantly thinking about it because I like analyzing media and shows, and I like thinking about the things that I watch. Um, so when I'm picking like my arguments, it's typically just arguments and things that I've thought about, and then I'll just go to Twitter and find people who disagree with me. And
You're looking for it.
it's not even that hard. I'll just go on Twitter and see the worst takes possible on a given thing. It's
Hmm.
Twitter. If you want to find, I don't. I got on Twitter as Elon Musk joined because I was
Oh.
like, I need to watch this dumpster fire. I need to see how badly he can run this into the ground because I've
Mm-hmm.
heard. So I joined it, and it's obvious. It's so bad. It's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst. But you can see so many bad takes,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're
It's
so
free
vocal with
content.
them.
It's free
It is.
content. I do it for
I just
Friday. Every
yeah.
Friday,
I
dumb
just
fuck Friday.
I just go to Twitter and I just
Mm,
find like the worst takes. And it's so easy to find because people are so vocal with their terrible takes and people just
mm.
don't get the things that they're doing and they don't understand what they're watching and they just kind of surface level dive in and then they don't think about it. So then when they go on Twitter and they like speak their opinion, they're incredibly unnuanced and unthoughtful takes on the things that they're watching and consuming. So it's really easy just to like, oh, I have a nuanced and informed opinion. There's somebody who doesn't. Yippee, fights. Uh,
Easy. Easy street.
easy.
I
But
find that
mhm,
with Twitter, like
mhm,
pre and post Musk, because I've been there for a while and I get into shit on Twitter all the time. It's kind of part of what I do, right? And
mhm,
it's I find that like it was easier to find people who were actually willing to try to have the conversation pre Musk. Whereas post Musk, it's just like people aren't even willing to try. They'll have a shitty take, and then they won't even want to like even try to engage in how shitty their take is.
oh my god. It's the lack of nuance that Musk Twitter has is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like recently I've been because I'm a gamer, I've been following a lot of the gamer news and people were losing their minds over Stellar Blade. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
God, it started with a lot of right wing leaning commenters going, "This game is a cultural touchstone for us," and I'm like, dude, just say you like boobs and go home. We all like boobs.
It's
Like you
not a
can just
problem.
say,
Yeah.
like, dude, just play it one handed and leave. You don't need to do this. And then there's been this recent thing where I have been trying to verify whether or not it is fake or it's real because there's been a lot of people say of like there's apparently censorship in the game and it's just like a lace front to one of the more revealing costumes that the main character wears. It is like the simplest lace front and if you turn the character sideways there's still so much boob. It's like,
It's
dude, there's still boobs, I promise, they're
what do you
still
think the
there.
modding community is for? Like Boulder and even Boulder's Gate is just there's sex all over the place if you really want to go
you
looking for it.
you want sex in games? Just go play Baldur's Gate. Karlach's in there. Like, what are you doing?
What more do you need? Hot tiefling lady, both literally
Dude,
and figuratively.
exactly. And if that's not your thing, there's Shadowheart. If you want to be freaky, go to Minthara. And or Lays Out. There's options for everybody.
You also get to
But
make your own character, so if you want to make somebody that you think is fuckable, just make somebody you think is fuckable.
right? You could just do that. But these people are like, this is a cultural touchstone, and it's so weird. It's and they're now losing their minds because of the censorship thing that from what I can tell is actually a doctored image because there are people
Mm-hmm.
in the game saying like mine isn't censored, look, titties. And then there are people who are going like, I don't know.
I wonder if there's
And
a
I'm like,
setting in the back, because sometimes there are. Sometimes there's settings in the back that you can change one way or another if you want more or
right?
less nudity. So you would think that it would be something that simple, but if it's like that elusive, then that seems not to be the case. It sounds just fake.
But that would also require the people who are making these comments to have actually, one, played the game, and then two, like,
know that they can
also,
look in the settings.
yeah, I'll be able to push buttons or something. I don't know. The complaints are always wild to me. And like, I've got my biases. I'm left leaning, so of course I'm gonna be
Sure.
like, the right wing people are all dumb.
Yeah, you went to
Not this.
university in Toronto in the 2000s. Of course you're left leaning.
Yeah, I'm like, crazy. But it's like, I found that like whenever it comes down to like the culture war,
Yes.
that they
Mm.
claim that
Mhm.
they apparently think exists and is real, it's always comes down to weird nonsense that is vaguely disguised fetish stuff, and then and
Yeah.
and then that's it. Like, that's their only
The
point.
the
It's
the
like they,
barely hidden misogyny.
the barely hidden misogyny, and then alpha wolf stuff, which I'm not entirely convinced isn't furries. Like,
I like that
and,
idea. I just like that as the headcanon is now. Now that's the headcanon. There are two
and
wolves inside of me. They're both furries. They're kissing.
they're gay. They love each other very much.
So you're talking about like the worst takes that you've seen from like this kind of alpha wolf bro. Why is the Little Mermaid black kind of people? Have you seen the shit about the XMen '97?
I have not seen the shit about the XMen '97. What's been happening there?
They're mad because
what's been going
XMen is
down?
woke now.
Now?
Yeah, now,
Not
just now.
previous?
Nope,
Not
just
pre-
right now. You want to know
You mean-
why? Because
Why?
the character who literally has no gender because they are a shapeshifter doesn't identify as a male or a female. They identify as non-binary because they are literally non-binary. And they're mad about this character who appeared in like 2 episodes of the original.
That is maddening.
Yes, one of them was the pilot. Yes. Yes, surprise, surprise, everyone. X-Men is now going
X-Men
woke.
It definitely wasn't an allegory for marginalized communities in the past. I know there was a specific one when it was written, probably related to the fact that the writer was a Jewish guy, and it may or may not have something to do with that. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? But it's
Somebody
now
called
woke
Jon
because-
Stewart. Maybe he can figure it out.
yeah, maybe. We'll never figure it out, obviously, because we're just some libs with our haircuts.
Oh no, the side cuts and the bangs and the ponytails. Whatever.
Oh no.
Our hair's
And the
not
lack
blue
of
enough.
Gender, the no genders.
You got cat ears, I got a side swipe, we're done.
Oh God, how will we ever figure anything out if we can't even figure out agendas? How?
I do enjoy the irony of that problem, though. It's like, oh no, you can't figure out your gender. It's like, no, I'm telling you that this is my gender. You're the one having the problem.
And the most baffling one for me has been because I've obviously loved language. I read a lot of plays. I've read more Shakespeare than anyone has any right to and needs to. You don't need to know Shakespeare. They existed before other pronouns and before a lot of other pronouns. Like, they spawned spawned other things. And they're like, they is a new word. And I'm like, no! No, it's not!
Literally never heard this word before in my entire life.
Yeah.
Who invented this? Yesterday.
Who invented they? And then you speak to them, I'm like, would they like a candy bar? It's like, why are you being weird?
Triggered.
Why are you being weird about this? It's so good, so wild. Because I also grew up in a very conservative part of Canada. I grew up in Alberta, Canada.
The Texas of Canada.
The Texas of Canada. And I had to, when going back, I had to explain my gender because I went back for Christmas. I had to explain gender to people because I identify as non-binary, use he, they pronouns, and they were like, "How can you identify as they?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean by how?" And they were like, "Well, that's for plural." I'm like, "No, you use it singular all the time." And they're like, "How?" And I'm like, "Okay, where's my brother?" And they're like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Okay, I think they're in the kitchen." And I went, "I think they're in the kitchen."
They are? The conjunction?
Hmm? And they were like, "Okay, but that doesn't count." And I'm like, "Shut up! Yes, it does. That's that. That's all it is."
Do you find?
No.
Oh, sorry. Finish.
I was like, "That's all you needed. That is it."
Do you find that? Because I do know that you bring up in your videos like things like fallacies. Now, usually you go through and you explain which fallacy it is and why. So I know off the top of my head you brought up like the straw man fallacy about Helldivers because it's like that's not the argument, that's not the issue. Do you find that having gone to college or gone to university or studied a lot has made you kind of more leaning towards utilizing things like rhetorical philosophy? Because that's what that falls under.
It's definitely made me much more aware of it and much more like because like I everybody uses them when they speak because they're attractive arguments. Something that I found when doing LSAT studying is like we go through some of those like fallacies sometimes in the courses that I was taking to prepare for it. And the thing is that they are attractive arguments because they sound good and they sound like they make a lot of sense. And usually the underlying flaw of those arguments is always you're talking about something else. You're talking about something that's slightly different. Like, for example, if I was to bring up like with Helldivers, Helldivers is satire. And the reason why it's satire is because it's making fun of imperialism and fascism. If somebody then was to go, if someone was to go, fascism existed before imperialism, therefore your argument is false, I'd be like, well, that's not what we're talking about, is it? Hello, Landon.
Landon made it. I'm so sorry, Landon. That was my fault.
Yes, there's some people that are time zone children. I would say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone and latitude or your ability to determine time zones. I apologize for being late. I was on a call to one of my former students who lives in England about video games and society and so forth. And I was about ready to say, I got to go join the show. I was getting him a link when I realized it's right there. So I apologize for the interruption.
To talk about video games and society. Welcome.
Yes, he's actually a real game developer who works on games he can't talk about because they're in active release. And his job is he's the guy that does the menus, not the cool graphics, but the stuff that you click something and things happen. He's the person who does that piece of code.
Says what happens. So we were just talking about, Landon, we were talking about the satire in Helldivers and Offbeat Outlaw utilizing kind of philosophical rhetoric and whether or not an argument sounds good versus whether or not the argument actually is good.
And so again, I apologize. Can the speaker introduce himself just briefly? I apologize for the interruption.
Yes. No problem. Hello, I'm Offbeat Outlaw. I am a Dungeons and Dragons, mostly YouTuber who is moving into commentary channels and whatnot. I graduated from University of Toronto with a theater and drama studies degree, as well as Sheridan College with an acting degree.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And now I'm trying to utilize that degree I got 4 years ago in my content more and more of a media analysis type of way. Looking at media as well, of how it connects to past media, what type of stories they're actually trying to tell, and what context and framework they therefore bring forth.
So metamedia is something of great interest to you.
Yes,
not just
very much.
Just the communication and anyway, I think congratulations. That's actually a fine institution. And so video games are one of the ways that media expresses itself. Would you say?
Yes. Yeah, I'd say video games are I would argue I have no stats for this, but I would argue they're one of the most important touchstones of current day media. I would say that they're one of the most influential pieces of media in the modern day, partly because of just how it is the largest industry money wise. It is the
it's
largest
very
industry
big.
currently.
Yeah.
And I would say that the way that stories can be told in media are significantly more in depth. They're bigger, they're grander. They can interact with the person consuming it more, because the person consuming the media is also partly the writer of said media. They're the one playing the game, and
The game forces
you
game forces you to interact with it. Therefore, you have to think about the narrative and the story that's actually being told to engage with the media in any. Whereas in a movie, you can kind of just turn it on, and leave it on in the background or whatever.
Yeah, you are a passive individual when you're watching that, but when you are playing video games, you are an agent. You have decisions to make, choices to engage with.
Good point. And the gaming industry is the dog who wags Hollywood's tail, right? It's rare now that a movie is produced because it's a movie. It is usually to advertise cutscenes for some game that they want you to buy.
Yeah, and especially with the success of TV shows nowadays, of like things like The Last of Us and Fallout, the Fallout series being so successful, it's there was a trend in like the 2010s where video games really wanted to be movies. They were really trying to be movies, and we saw that with games like Uncharted and the first Last of Us. They were really trying to push this this thoughtful narrative type of game.
Metal Gear Solid, the last 4 was like that. A lot of cutscene,
That's just Kojima, though. He loves his cutscenes.
Also true.
But I think one of the things I see that the game industry, who doesn't really give a damn about the people playing it, right? It is a
League of Legends,
a revenue window that they want to exploit, especially if they could do it exclusive to some platform, and for a period of time, where the game, when it gets announced in movie posters and game posters, has already been put in the can. Whatever bugs are there are going to stay there, and the developers have moved on to the next game media movie franchise, right? So that when the game comes out, as long as the reviewers, so-called influencers, don't pan it, and they have professional services to fix whatever problems the reviewers have, so they can say, great game, buy it. Then the public comes in, finds the game to be unplayable in certain places, but the company doesn't care, because they're already developing the next game, and they don't want to spend resources on fixing the game. So I'm appalled that people buy bags of digital shit that don't work, and the company has no interest in, or they might have a couple of people that will fix bugs if it gets involved with sales, but otherwise,
the video game industry,
as a movie watcher, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the thing I think is something that's really interesting about video games is that the highest in movies, it's like the more money you spend, the higher the quality. I feel like that's a general rule you can almost sort of expect.
Yep.
But there's almost like there's this other end of the curve where you spend too much money and all of a sudden your game is ass.
Yeah.
Like Ubisoft recently released this game called some pirate game. I don't know. No. It was a piece of garbage. I think they advertised it as the first quadruple A game because it took 10 years to develop, multiple studios around the world, several grants from Singapore to make and finish, and it was terrible.
It was Skull and Bones?
Skull and Bones, yes, Skull and Bones. It recently released. And it released the exact same time as Helldivers did.
Oh, no.
They were like a week apart. They were both these online multiplayer games. Now, Helldivers, still a big budget because it was published by Sony, released, and was in also a buggy state. But there was an inherent difference in perception of those games because, for one, Helldivers was a smaller studio. It was Arrowhead Studios, I think at the time when they released Helldivers, had 100 people on payroll.
Yeah.
And Ubisoft is a international company with studios all over the world, starting from Montreal. But Helldivers has managed to maintain its success because despite the bugs and the glitches that some of which are still present, there was that intent to continue to update the game, to fix the game. It was released in a buggy state, but it was playable and it was still fun, and they are intent on fixing it.
Yeah.
I think Helldivers wasn't
There's more
already
trust
existing,
there.
Yeah, there is. There's weirdly more trust with smaller studios now because there's this idea. I feel like smaller studios have to put more money into the things that they're making and have to care more, because if Ubisoft fails, they're not going to go under. If they release 10 dog shit games, as long as they release another Assassin's Creed every 5 years, they will make more money than God.
Yeah.
But
that's how I feel about Square Enix, and they're just like, oh, don't worry, we're just gonna throw out something that's got Cloud and Tifa in it, and we'll make money. It's fine.
Yeah,
you're right. And I say, you know, that one of my former students, you know, when I asked about Game Ball, he said, "Oh yes, I was doing final development on that a year and a half ago, but it was delayed because the movie studio." Was conflicting with a competing game, so they shifted the time so it come out the appropriate spot. But it is. But he said, but don't bother buying the game; it's not fit for purpose. And why? Because we're working on a sequel, and essentially there's only a couple of people left to do the work. And who's to blame for it? You, the game purchasers, right?
Yeah.
You tolerate, and so places like in Australia, if the game is not fit for purpose, you can actually demand your money back under consumer rights. So imagine a buggy game causes you have a law that says I can get my money back if the game doesn't work.
There's something that's going on right now that's a little bit of a movement, and it's a little bit of an international one that's sort of that somebody's trying to start. They're called Accursed Farms. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They did like the Freeman's Mind machinima back in the day. Like they're from like on the internet a very long time ago, and they've been silent for a little while, and I guess they had spent 4 months just deep diving, like hyper focusing on this idea where he's like sick of game developers and gaming companies ruining gaming by deleting games. So like you bought your you bought your game digitally, your game doesn't work anymore, they're turning the game off, like vanilla WoW, for example. And I guess there's a game called The Crew that was a relatively popular game that they're shutting down, and he's got these like petitions that he's trying to do and research around the world to try to say, hey, if you are part of this game, or if you're a gamer and interested in making it so that these companies can't take advantage of this legal loophole, which might be something for you to look into if you're moving into law, they're getting petitions and getting things put through government. But when he was explaining his plan, he just went, so America, so in Canada, and like he just skipped America entirely and had to go back because he's like, all right, fine. I'll send it to you if you're interested, but it's like, what do you think? I mean, it's a whole fucking bunch of chaos.
I think the thing is I think there's like, to kind of talk to your point, Landon, about the consumer is to blame. I think there's the gamers are to blame. Yes. I think there's also a bit of blame to be placed on overpaid CEOs.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that is in this industry is insane. Activision Blizzard recently was purchased by Microsoft, and as a result, they as part of the purchase, Bobby Kotick was released. That man, I would argue, is largely to blame for Activision Blizzard's recent fall in success. Well, not recent. I'd say it's happened over the past like half a decade or whatever. But when you're looking at how much money is in that company and how much money you're paying somebody, Bobby Kotick's salary by the time he was fired was $1 billion. That is not a exaggeration. I think it was like $800 million. It was an absurd amount of money. And if you have a CEO who's at the top of your chain getting paid $800 million to make games, you're guaranteed going to be making less quality It's like,
Yeah.
how can you keep on your talent? Like the people who made Overwatch in 2016, that game won Game of the Year that year. It was the first multiplayer game to have ever won Game of the Year because it had a great idea. It's also a great IP. It's well made. But Bobby Kotick siphoned out $1 billion every year. That is $1 billion no longer going to R&D. That is like
your artists, your art, like your drawing artists, your character designers, your lore people, because lore will keep games like that alive. That's one of the reasons why League of Legends had such a boom recently, is because of how much they put in.
And all that stuff removes the quality from the games. And in fact, it may be the case is that games that get more hyped, where they spend a lot of money on the marketing and the glitz and the showing the cutscenes, but don't actually deliver.
That is.
And I didn't mean that the gamers are the only ones to blame, but there's this thing. I mean, leave it to Sony, Sony Entertainment, Activision Entertainment, to make me say nice things about Microsoft.
I know, right?
Oh, there's like a deep lore beef that Landon has with Microsoft. We can't even get into it.
Look, I hate Microsoft too. I hate all companies with too many numbers behind them.
I will say this as a short thing. I am somebody that Ballmer has thrown chairs about. I was on the team for the original breakup of Microsoft that caught them falsifying information to the court.
Yikes.
And I also helped the EU cost Microsoft a hell of money, right? But recently I've had to say nice things about Microsoft. They've done really nice things in open source, and they're doing things that are there because of Sony is that bad. But this is part of the infection in the game industry.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to a movie and see game advertisements. I can tell, right? The corruption and the downfall of Star Wars. Please don't watch any Star Wars. Please do
Disney.
not watch any of the shows.
God.
Star Wars as an industry needs to die. The people who are there need to go on unemployment because it's dead. I don't have. I no longer admit that I had anything to do with Star Wars, and that's an example where essentially a good storyline got turned to crap.
I have a question actually.
Games.
That's a little bit more.
And if you're buying Star Wars games, you're part of the problem.
Yeah, a little bit more into the line of media literacy. How do you feel about a series or an IP coming to an end?
You need them. You need an end. You need something. The idea of a forever game, the idea of a forever series, I think that is an executive's wet dream that they're forcing upon us. You cannot have something that lasts forever and just keeps shitting out content. You cannot. What is happening to Star Wars, I think, is a good example. I think they did a few good things with their revival of the Star Wars IP. I thought the first movie was good. I thought the second new movie had good cinematography. And The Mandalorian, as much as it just sold Baby Yoda toys, I did like it. I did enjoy it. But then post that, they've just continued. I had the latest season of The Mandalorian that I watched. One of the things that made the first one so interesting to me and I loved so much was at the end of every show, they'd show the concept art that inspired the shots. And I love that. Or we're drawn afterwards. I don't know. But I love that because I'll be like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. And they've managed to recreate that. In the new season, they didn't do that at all. I was like, what's going on here? Why is the cinematography worse?
All the money got siphoned out and put into some CEO's pocket.
Put into Baby Yoda toys.
God damn it, Gru.
I do not care how good Mandalorians are. Star Wars is dead. And if you enable it, you are part of the problem, in my opinion. Now, but if you talk about game franchise, FIFA.
Oh God.
A lazy thing where they just simply change the icons, change the year, sometimes even forgetting, and release it, and people will buy it again. right? That's the thing where the number of developers that actually do FIFA stuff is actually, you can count on maybe one hand of real developers. The rest, they just help out knowing they can make
It's
more money.
in the game. One of the things that was like that I find interesting, because COD was doing that as well. COD was kind of coming out with basically reskin the same game over and over again. And the thing that got people back into playing COD again was when they came out with COD Zombies. And if you remember, the zombie Nazis in COD had a storyline. Like, it was wave missions, but there was a storyline, and if you did specific things during those waves, you would actually get a progressive story that kept people interested in playing that, because it wasn't just endless waves after endless waves for no good reason. There was a goal, and a part of the goal was that there was a mystery to figure out.
Yeah, that was, I think when COD Zombies came out with that, I think it was so novel. Because like I was playing it like 11, way too young to be playing COD, but I was like, zombies, let's go.
Yeah,
It was so novel at the time because it was also borrowing a lot of the storytelling devices that you would go on that BioShock involved with environmental storytelling. And it was so unique in that, and to kind of like showcase that difference between original COD Zombies and modern FIFA. The fact that these are the same in some ways ideas is insane. Because like FIFA, I've never engaged with the sports games. I think I played I think I played the NHL games. I
Same.
think I played it when like 2000.
Can you tell we're Canadian?
Oh my god. Dude, I think I played it in like I got one game, and then I knew there was another game coming out the next year, and I went, oh, this is just what they do.
Yeah.
And I never picked up another one.
Yeah.
But it's like,
and of course, go ahead.
There's just so, and I think the thing is the studios are so motivated to do this, and there's this whole economy of gamers that just buy FIFA or buy 2K or buy these sports games over and over and over and over again. It is wild to me, because how I purchase games is I wait for reviews to come out, because I love games, but I also know there's tons of garbage out there. I wait for reviews to come out. I follow the dev cycle, and I match how they met their targets. If I can see that there was considerable setbacks, I don't buy the game, because I bought Elden Ring when in 2022 when it came out. That game took 6 years to make. However, it was a consistent dev cycle from a studio that I trust.
Yeah.
Because From Software they go, we make video games that take a while and reach a niche audience, but it'll work out because we know how much money we're going to make, and we're not going to overspend, and we're not going to be ridiculous about it.
Yeah.
But then FIFA's like, we know we can make $1 billion this year if we shit out another FIFA game, change some of the shininess on the shoe settings, and then release card packs every week.
And it's a shame too, right? Because they could take advantage of that guaranteed money. Nintendo does this. Nintendo takes advantage of their essentially guaranteed money by popping out a Mario game, use it to do some innovation, but then also use it to fund other things inside of Nintendo.
Yeah.
And not that Nintendo is great, don't get me wrong. I have a very strong love-hate relationship with Nintendo where I'm like, this is amazing, but also fuck you. But like, this is something that they do.
So I think we still have a situation, we talk about with media, where you have to have a story, right? As much as the fancy graphics and so forth is there, if you don't have a story, this is like the early Pixar motto, is you start with a story that's compelling, and then you build a movie around it, right? If you don't have a story, you just have a arcade thing, right? And that's part of the problem. The other bit is that the developers, a game developer, gets paid a substantially lower wage than an equivalent software developer, right? I think depending on what country you're in, you might find you're between 40 and 60% salary of a software developer of equivalent skills. So these studios, the people who actually create stuff, don't get paid enough, and the result is that people tend to not last in the industry. If you've been there for 10 years, you're considered an old timer, because most people find out it's more lucrative to go to some other place in technology. than to be a developer. And then they get frustrated by the fact that they're working on a game, but the studio says it's coming out this day. We don't care how bad it is, as long as the reviewers get hand coddled and maybe even assisted in their reviews. I'm not claiming anything. I'm just
allegedly.
I'll say it. They're paid off. I'm not tied to an organization.
The developer will say, probably this said, there's this game, right? There's this game that is out that finishes early. About the last third of the game is unplayable, and the fix was to have the cutscene and the ending scene be done here because there's a single channel that the game reaches where it doesn't work, and the solution was to cut off the last third of the game, have it become the final game, and people love the game.
It's because it had an ending. It had an ending. It ended.
Yes, and it said, if you know how to patch and cheat, you can get around the thing and find.
There's lots of things about gaming and about media and about like movies and development that it's success through adversity, right? Where you know that this is a problem, you have to find a way to work around it. Why Mario's overalls are orange.
An independent studio becomes successful. They get bought out by.
Don't talk to me about Sonic Boom, chat. Get out of here.
How do we this dog that wags the tail that is Hollywood, right? Hollywood used to be a place where filmmakers could go and sell compelling stories. Now they have to essentially be the side product to sell a game.
They've got to sell a franchise, effectively.
An IP,
yes.
Yeah.
You're trying to ask, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot. We got to get really cool with a lot of things real quick. One, we unionize game development. Like we need devs to have. Devs need to be getting paid wages, and studios need to understand that the reason why they have more money than any other industry is because of the talent of developers and because of the people in the game industry who love games. There are people in that industry that just love games and love making them. Like this is why I think FromSoft is a really great company as far as the gaming industry is concerned, because they care about their talent. They want them to stay on. Recently, one of their composers who's composed the soundtracks for Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. So that's nearly a 20 year, like not 20. That's like, I don't know, 15-year career with a single company. Yeah. They left because they were like, I've made enough money now. I'm happy. I love FromSoft. If they want me to do a single song, I'll come back, but I just want to now make some more concert stuff.
It opens up a space for new talent to come in.
Dude, new talent. And they know that FromSoft is a company that will nurture you and keep you fed for 15 years.
Yeah.
So you need unions. And then companies need to understand that, like, there needs to be less incentive, consumers need to not want to just consume one thing. If I consume a movie, I shouldn't want to then go and play the video game and read the comic book and wear the t-shirt. It shouldn't consume me like that. But that's what companies do. Yeah. There's so much money in that, obviously, so companies are pushing for it.
That was a joke in Spaceballs.
People realize that George Lucas's thing was, I'm not going to be a Hollywood thing. I'm going to go off to a place in Marin and put out a movie for a song and a dance as long as they give me 100% on the residuals, right? They became a very wealthy person because they didn't understand what Lucas did, is the money is in all the plush toys and the other sort of things there.
I just realized that Elon Musk did the Spaceballs meme. Spaceballs the flamethrower. Oh my God.
I'm concerned. You're right that the developers are not paid. If you're a software developer, but you're in the game industry, and you try to live in a place like Silicon Valley or in London or a place where where there's software talking about, you're not going to get a reasonable living wage unless you're one of the 1/10 of 1% people. And the result is that people move out of the game development industry rather soon because it's not lucrative. Because
well, it's not that it's not even lucrative; it's that they can't afford to eat.
Yes,
it's not sustainable.
And the other thing is,
right?
Then they say that then the game itself has to reach a little better quality, right? If you can demonstrate bugs, you should be able to get your money back without a fuss. The studio should suffer from having a game that doesn't work, has fundamental flaws.
There needs to be accountability against these studios that are publishing crap.
I'm going to link you guys and link in the chat the Accursed Farms channel. If you go there, people in chat, if you go and check that out, it will kind of go into a little bit about exactly what we're talking about and actually petitions and legal battles that are currently active and taking place to fight for these kinds of things. There seems to be a little bit of a push to try to do it in other countries to force change in like places like more Western, like America. So go ahead.
The thing is, I think one of the things is with like when it comes to legal battles, when it comes to companies especially, the US is always lagging behind when it comes to regulating companies. They're always the last ones to do it. And I think a big problem is something that there's whenever there is too much money in an industry, whenever there's too much money in an industry, I think what tends to happen is that the CEOs get greedy, the money goes all the way to the top, and they don't sustain the talent. And as a result, you start getting this talent siphoning. Like people just leave the industry who are actually useful.
Yeah.
It's happening in any unsustainable market. Like it's happening in Canada as a country.
Yep.
There are people in Canada who are incredibly talented or in some way or another. My brother is actually has a PhD in machine learning, and has published several papers, one in Nature and one in NeurIPS or whatever. He's got several published papers, but he can't get a job in Canada. So he's been poached by a massive company in Canada, in America, because they're like, hey, do you want to live? Do you want to like make so much money that you can just like live and be happy? And he's like, yeah,
the American dream.
And because it's essentially
he's a dirty immigrant
syndrome where all the hockey players go to the U.S. to play in places like Phoenix that are unnatural for hockey.
Yep.
It's that sort of thing. I also, please understand, I'm not saying all games are this way. There are some wonderful independent studios that put out extraordinary games with people that have a lot of passion. So I don't want to every game because you could say, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
We're talking about the general problem.
We do need to start.
The main money is in the slop content. There's so much money in that slop content.
We do have to start wrapping up now. I'm just going to go. My Unfinished Journey for 10 said, I played a few of EA's NASCAR games. There would be changes in gameplay from one game to the next. I liked 05 the best. After that, the changes went in a direction that I didn't like and I lost interest. Yep, that's about what happens. I also had one question from chat that is a little bit directed a little bit differently for our guest, but since we were talking about it earlier, from Sar, that says, do you think that people running Dungeons & Dragons helps people to see more perspectives as they have to run many different characters, or do you think that it can entrench them in the way that they are?
I think it really depends on the individual. I know this is a non-answer as any, but it really does depend on, are you the type of person who, when making a Dungeons & Dragons world and when DMing, are you going to seek those other perspectives? Or are you just going to make the perspectives and pretend they're different? Because you're playing multiple people doesn't mean you're actually seeing other perspectives. It's very easy to think you are, but you could just be straw manning those perspectives. You might not actually see the underlying truth to them. You might miss them. And I think this is what happens with a lot of DMs. And if you check Reddit, you'll see tons of points of people missing the point or just being completely incorrect.
Yeah.
Because as much as like as much as I can DM a game for my players, I also, part of what I like to do is you also have to ask them what they thought. And a lot of DMs don't have this circular, this conversation with their players where they go, what did you think of the game? What changes would you like? Did I do anything wrong? You have to put your ego to the side, but many DMs I know are very incapable of doing that.
Yeah.
I see that in my videos when I'm making power builds. I will find some ridiculous exploit written in the text of the multitudes of books in D&D. Someone will go, that's wrong. I'll go, why? They'll go, because I said so. And I'm like, if you can't even handle that different perspective, a perspective that's written in the books, how are you supposed to handle a different perspective from somebody who's different than you?
Something that's literally up to interpretation, right? The rules in D&D, particularly 5th edition, are written to be interpreted on purpose in some cases. In some cases, it just says some silly things. It happens.
Another brief question, games in general, be it tabletop or electronic, franchises become international. But international, you then have a problem of being reduced to the lowest common denominator. For example, if your game, be it let's say a tabletop game or a computer game, offends the Chinese Communist Party, you get locked out of the
massive market,
a large mass market. So do you capitulate and say we don't want to offend? If you're an independent game that offends, let's go offensively offends, pick some entity. And
if Five Nights at Freddy's look like a panda bear and they weren't able to sell FNAF in China, what should the studio, Scott Cawthon, do?
So tell me about the international problems of game franchises versus politics of.
I think there was a statement made by Arrowhead Studios. The CEO of their company went, a game made for everybody is a game made for nobody. And I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Very good point. Wow.
Yeah, it's like you cannot appease everybody. This is in any creative endeavor. You cannot appease everybody. I know I have an abrasive personality when I'm online. Like my online persona is aggressive and abrasive and makes fun of people. Naturally, that's going to piss people off. But that's also the draw to my audience. They go, I like this guy. He says what I think. And I go, cool. In the same vein, if you make a game like Helldivers, which is a satirical which is a satire of imperialism and the forever wars that require that imperialism and fascism requires, you're going to piss people off.
Yeah.
You're going to piss off people that are like, I love imperialism. I don't know if anyone says that, but
nobody
I'm sure
literally says those words. It's just the sentiment.
Yeah, they're like, I don't love imperialism. I just like fighting in wars that will never win. But
or will never end.
Yeah. But you're going to piss people off. And I think that for studios, China's obviously a massive market and there's so much money that's involved in there. But I think they also have to start understanding it's like China's just a specific example in this case. If you piss off a large market, you're probably also still having a massive market. It is the CEO and capitalist perspective. I want to make all the money rather than enough money. Like when Overwatch came out, loot boxes became an unfortunate part of gaming. And the reason is that they made more money from loot boxes in a single year than they had in 10 years of World of Warcraft releases. They'd made so much money and they went, but so we just need to keep marketing on this. And as that happened, we saw that they just kept wanting to make more money. And it's like, you have enough. You have so much money. Accept it.
And the loot box doesn't advance the story. It's not.
It doesn't.
It doesn't do anything for the game. Yeah. It's a gotcha. It's a gambling thing. It's a let us ruin everything about the integrity of our game just for the sake of blah 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 blah. But we should. Oh, sorry.
That's right. Some of my Gen Z friends, some of my youngsters, my young bucks, I'm gonna call him out directly. My buddy, Danny Phantom EXE. He loves loot boxes, and I'm like, you got brain rot.
No!
You're an iPad kid.
Oh
dear,
no!
oh, dear.
Danny, no!
But,
we're gonna have to confront him with an intervention.
I will put up with a 1970s style character-based game if it's got a compelling story.
Cuphead did great. But besides, before we go into that, you do realize that you just presented somebody who goes by Danny Phantom online with that he's having trouble with loot boxes and the one-to-one parallel of the character Danny Phantom and the box ghost.
Oh, I'm aware. He's
Wonderful.
not, but I am.
Oh, no. All right. On that note, we should look to wrap up. I know you've got to go. We've been live for an hour. Landon, thank you for joining us late. I am so sorry. That was 100% my fault. There was a confusion in I can't count to 3, apparently.
Canada.
That is absolutely my fault.
You have to say trademark Canada when you say sorry if you're not Canadian. That's
yep.
That's the rule.
That is the rules. Thank you so much for joining us, Offbeat Outlaw. Links down below. Do you have anything you want to shill before you go?
Anything I want to show? Just the YouTube channel as per the usual. Go watch me get really mad about Avatar. That's the most recent video.
Is there a link to your channel?
It is down below in the description. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you want to find out the real villain of Avatar, the last of Kora is Varric and capitalism, you go watch that. You're all wrong.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.